Wondering why somebody from a property estate agency is here to talk about what's going on in warehousing. I'm just going to give you 10 minutes to bring us back on time and really explain to you guys why real estate is often the forgotten part of the supply chain, and also why it's going to be a real pinch point in your operations in the coming years. Peter's talked about the impact of Amazon and what's going on in logistics and supply chain. Really, the Amazonification of everything is coming. They've just poached a team from Marks and Spencer's and Primark. They've just launched AmazonBusiness.com, which is effectively a competitor to Travis Perkins and Selco and all of that type of stuff. They're going to start selling prescriptions. They're going to start selling cars. And the problem is they have no consideration for profit. So they're making completely illogical business decisions and completely illogical real estate decisions when everyone else in this room is trying to make logical, thought-leading decisions about their business and their profitability. And Amazon are making no consideration to that at all. And that's going to impact every single one of us in this room, no matter what industry you work in. And I'll just explain why it's an issue for property, and then hopefully this might not impact your day-to-day, but if it doesn't, feel free to pass this on to your property directors or your FDs or whoever it might be, because as I say, it will have an impact, because effectively your timescales are going to increase because there is no warehousing, so you're going to have to build your own, or you're going to have to buy land, or your costs are going to increase because rents are increasing, and business rates are increasing as well. There's just been another rating revaluation. So all of these things combined are going to have a real impact in terms of what you're doing. I like this slide. 2016, the year that logistics became front page news. I've been covering warehouse property for 10, 11, 12 years. And just last year, we were phone called by the Telegraph. We ended up on the front page of the Telegraph talking about warehousing, which is, is insane. It's never been like this before in any kind of way, shape or form. Again, we're talking about a 2 million square foot warehouse going underground at Heathrow. I don't know if anyone's kind of seen this. We're advising a landlord, a developer, about building a 2 million square foot shed in greenbelt land underneath Heathrow. Again, this is really interesting in terms of what's going on in the sector. How will you guys, as operational logistics people, react and work to what's going on? Peter's talked about innovative solutions. I did a piece of work recently for a major warehouse developer, and they were talking about what was it that allowed the creation of these 17-story sheds in Asia. And effectively, you had three things. You had population increasing. Well, we've got that in the UK. You had land prices increasing. Well, you had that. You've got that in the UK, all over the UK, not just London. And the third thing you had is a really, really militant planning environment. We haven't quite got that yet in the UK, but we are on the cusp. The Greater London Authority has talked about the intensification of existing sites. So pretty much it's going to be enforced. People are going to have to go up. It's going to be the only way. And I know the Greater Manchester Authority are talking about that as well. Guys in Birmingham are talking about that as well. And increasingly, we're talking about mixing of uses. So you're going to see some form of logistics on the ground floor, some form of residential or retail or another type of use on the second floor as well. So again, how do we mix in with that? Some good examples. I mentioned Travis Perkins again. They've done some work in King's Cross with student accommodation above a Travis Perkins builder's yard. Again, if those two types of uses can coexist, there's no reason why operational logistics, last mile delivery, can't coexist with residential, retail, other forms of property use. Right. Why is our sector so newsworthy? In all the turmoil that was going on last year, politics, Trump, North Korea, all the rest of it, the best year of warehouse demand ever. 36 million square feet of warehousing was taken. That's a huge amount. Never before has it been that high. Even going back to, I guess, 2007, 2008, when the supermarkets, Tesco, Sainsbury's, were really acquisitive, it was never, ever that high. Second thing, we have the lowest amount of warehousing available to rent or buy ever. There's 26 million square feet, 150 odd warehouses across the UK. If you need a new warehouse, it's the lowest amount you've ever had. And thirdly, I know the first presentation talks about Amazon again. Is it a third? Is it a quarter? Whatever it is, it's loads. They've taken pretty much all of the available space on the market. All of the supermarkets combined in the 90s, in the noughties, never accounted for this amount of space that Amazon took last year. So again, this is what you're competing with in terms of your supply chain and the property implications that go round your supply chain. I'll skip over that just makes the point slightly differently. But this is the bit that you want to be aware of in terms of what's going on. Nobody's building. Nobody's building. There are just 22 warehouses coming out of the ground at the moment. So again, if you want to secure new space and you need it quickly, you need it in the place that you want it, well, there's no options. There's literally no options. 22 warehouses coming out of the ground. Pretty much all of them are at the smaller end of the scale. There's nothing being constructed over 300,000 square feet. So again, if you want something big, if you want something that suits your requirements, you're pretty much going to have to build it yourself with a landlord or a developer. The problem with that is it's going to increase your costs because you're going to have to sign a longer lease. You're going to have to commit to 15, 20-year lease, or you're going to have to pay a higher rent to offset that because the landlords of all of this property are effectively your pension funds, Legal & General, M&G, Standard Life. And they think of this as effectively a glorified buy-to-let. So then what they want is the security of tenure and the higher rent. So again, factoring it into these decisions, you're going to have to do because of the dynamics of the property market at the moment. We've talked about the Amazonification of what's going on. I'm just going to make one point here whilst we're in the Northwest. Look at this. At the bottom there, on the left-hand side as you're looking at it, it's saying there's 6 million square feet of warehousing in the Northwest. The problem is that the majority of it, 2/3 of it, is either old, poorly located, or poorly fitted out, or whatever it might be, second-hand. It's not really fit for purpose in the omni-channel retail world that we now find ourselves in. And actually, there hasn't been a deal. Nobody's taken a deal for a poor quality unit in the Northwest for close to 2 years. So there just isn't the demand for poorer quality units anymore. So again, if you need space, you're going to have to think long and hard, and you're going to have to compromise on something. But also what you're seeing is a two-tier market develop. If you're looking, again, for space, if you're an Amazon, if you're, I'm trying to think, Lidl, for example, who took the highest amount of space last year, a two-tier market is developing. If you're a 3PL, if you're being squeezed on margins, then you're going to have to take second-hand space. Almost 2/3 of all of the warehousing that logistics companies took last year was second-hand. Then you've got retailers, Amazon, Marks & Spencer's, Lidl, they're gobbling up all of the new stuff and all of the land. So again, you've got a decision to make. Do you take something new and work out your margin and your costs based upon that? Then you've got another decision to make. If you're an XPO, if you're a Wincanton, if you're a DHL, the landlord's going to want you to sign a 10, 15-year lease. How do you marry that up with your contract length? Some 3PLs are looking at doing a logistics campus. So actually buying up land, having 3 or 4 warehouses in one place. That's used typically on the continent. The likes of K&N do a lot of that in Switzerland, in Germany. Hasn't really happened too much in the UK. I think Stobart's is a good example of having campuses across the country, but I think that's going to come. But that means you're going to have to buy the land, take it through the planning process, that could take 10 years. So again, be aware of that in terms of what decisions, operational decisions, you guys are going to be making. Mark said what's coming. I've alluded to it already, not a lot. A really small amount of warehousing. This just tells you when it's coming. So again, if you want a warehouse after January 2018, well, there's nothing. So bear that in mind. I can talk about this at the break. Actually, I'm going to skip this. There's way too much information there to talk about. Rents. Rents are increasing with every day that passes. I remember, the standard Golden Triangle rent, $450, $495, $475. We're working with Prologis at the moment on a scheme in Birmingham. We're confident of achieving rents of £7.50 a foot in the Golden Triangle on the next iteration of warehousing coming out of the ground. Park Royal now is above £20 a square foot. Leighton, we've heard of warehousing being signed at £22 a square foot. That is now more expensive than office space on the periphery of the City of London. Warehouse space is now more expensive than office space. Bear that in mind. And if you're going to build your own, the costs are increasing as well. And the lead times are increasing. Brexit and the valuation of currency has had an impact on steel and the availability of steel to build new warehousing. So that is a massive pinch point as well. So cost of steel, lead time of steel, all having a big impact. Developers aren't going to swallow those costs forever. They're going to be pushed onto you guys, who in turn, I'm assuming, will push them onto us as the consumers. Land. Only 2.3% of the UK is built on. It's astonishing, isn't it? Only 2.3% is built on. Yet we shouldn't be running out of land. Yet every logistics company, every retailer, every developer, every planning authority says, well, we haven't got enough land to build logistics. Well, we need to build 300,000 new homes a year. We're currently only building about 180,000 new homes a year. All of the political pressure is to build residential houses. There is no political pressure to build warehousing and the supply chain that goes behind it. So therefore, there isn't any land coming through the planning process. So we as an industry have to be really, really on top of this and actually be lobbying. And the UKWA is doing a really good job of that. There's other guys out there doing it as well. But the big corporates in this room, make sure you use your voice to actually lobby your local MPs, national MPs, other trade associations to actually bring land through the planning process. Because otherwise, we're going to have this huge pinch point in the not too distant future. Because let's just look at this. Again, I'll pick out the Northwest because that's where we are. In the Northwest, there's just over 1,000 acres that has planning permission for warehouse development. 1,000 acres, that sounds a lot, doesn't it? That equates to 20 million square feet. 20 million square feet. Again, that sounds a lot. But in this new world that we're living in, the Amazonification of everything, that's just 4 years worth of land. 4 years. When all of that's gone, it's not being replenished at the rate that we need it, and that is effectively happening all across the country. Every single region that you go to has this same problem. So then you think about it, actually, you think the southeast there looks like a big geography. Well, it's not that big. And actually then, if you were to draw a line from Peterborough down to Southampton, and you said how many of those sites for logistics development are what we would classify as good, prime logistics sites, well-connected, multimodal, whatever it might be, 6. 6. Sorry, I need 2 hands. 6, from Peterborough to Southampton. They'll be gone really, really soon. So again, if you're thinking about, how to service people and geographies and do that last mile piece, you're going to need to, be one step ahead of what's going on here. The question at the beginning about drones, who said 5 years? There was an article in The Economist on Tuesday. Japan are going to implement regulation this year. Japan Post believe they will be using drones within the next 7 years to deliver parcels in Japan. The Japanese regulators have allowed this. I think it's going to happen. Japan has a lot of characteristics similar to the UK, which is a really highly urbanized environment and quite small as well and quite affluent. I was with a residential developer reasonably recently, and they're now mocking up residential schemes that effectively have big funnels on the top that can catch parcels. Is that good PR, or is it, you know, something slightly more interesting? I take the school of thought that Amazon haven't spent $12 billion on PR. I think they're doing it because there's an operational saving to be done. You know, will it work? Who knows? But I think people are doing it for the right reasons, which is cost, effectively. Again, just thinking about your warehouse and the design and what goes on in that warehouse, we're seeing a huge amount of interest now. People talking about putting in gyms, people talking about putting in creches, people talking about putting in, you know, other sorts of well-being and all of this type of stuff into their warehousing. Why is that interesting? Well, it requires a different type of design. It requires a different type of rent. It requires a different type of lease. It requires compromise, basically. If you're going to retrofit that type of stuff into your warehousing, you need to be thinking about how it all works and how it interacts with the property. You know, is it going to be easier to buy the land and do it yourself? Again, these are kind of questions that you as an industry need to consider. Docks, yards, doors. Again, a question is going to arise pretty soon about cubic rents and actually paying for volume rather than square footage. Again, I won't talk about it too much. You can ask me about it in the refreshment break. So for you guys, as you know, working in the supply chain, you know, a couple of big considerations really. Amazon are putting in 4 levels of structural concrete mezzanine into their building in Tilbury. That's expensive. It requires a whole kind of myriad of different construction considerations. The one thing we've not even talked about is power. Electric cars, automation, charging points, all requires power off the grid. Well, you can't get a grid connection in the East Midlands for about 2 years at the moment for a new scheme. So again, people are talking about on-site generation, some form of other use. And actually, we're working with a developer in Birmingham at the moment who are installing Tesla batteries into their warehousing, and they'll be offering that to the market speculatively. So again, on-site storage away from the grid, I think, is going to become really important as well. If you need new space, it's going to take longer. Just make sure you're aware of that. Gone are the days of saying, well, we need a new warehouse in Magna Park or you know, the Golden Triangle. Those days are gone. You need to be thinking about things a lot further in advance, and you need to be factoring in how much that's actually going to cost you. I'll be here at the break if any of those points have raised any interest, but that's the kind of takeaway that I leave you with. Thank you.